My dear friends, it is with a certain degree of astonishment that I find myself speaking to you, now not across the din of war-torn London or the echoing halls of Parliament, but through this curious little box of light and wires. You call it a YouTube video, and though I have only just begun to grasp its nature, I must say, if this contraption can carry my words to millions across the world, then I shall use it as I once used the radio as a tool for truth, conviction, and perhaps a touch of theatrical flair. I am Winston Churchill, by name and reputation. Some of you may know me from history books, others from dramatizations where actors' brave souls all attempt to mimic my voice, my gait, my cigars. But today, it is not an impersonator who speaks to you. It is I, in spirit and intent, reaching across the decades to offer what wisdom I can on one particular subject, the art of speech. How did I captivate crowds? That is your question, is it not? A fair one. And I shall answer it, not with false modesty nor inflated ego, but with the candor you would expect from a man who has faced both thunderous applause and bitter scorn. First, let us dispense with illusions. There was no secret formula, no hidden potion poured into my tea each morning to grant me the gift of tongues. No, my speeches were forged in study, tempered by experience and delivered with sincerity. I spoke not merely to be heard, but to be felt, to stir hearts, to summon courage, to remind a frightened people that they were not alone, and that their cause was righteous. You see, language is not simply a means of communication. It is a weapon, a shield, a flame in the darkness. When I stood before the House of Commons or addressed the nation over the wireless, I knew that every word carried weight. The wrong phrase could sow despair. The right one could ignite hope. I was not always. Thus, in youth, I struggled with speech. My stammer was notorious at Harrow, and more than once I was tempted to remain silent rather than stumble through a sentence. But I learned through repetition, through discipline, through sheer bloody-mindedness that even the most hesitant tongue can become eloquent if trained with purpose. Let me tell you this. Oratory is not about grandiloquence. It is not about filling the air with empty syllables. It is about clarity, about knowing precisely what you wish to say and why. If you do not believe in your own words, neither will your audience. In 1940, when Britain stood alone against tyranny, I did not seek to dazzle with ornamented prose. I sought to warn, to rally, to steel the nation's spine. We shall fight on the beaches, I declared, and those words struck like hammers upon an anvil. Not because they were poetic, but because they were true. A speech must be built like a fortress, strong foundation, sturdy walls, and a roof that shelters the listener from doubt. Begin with principle, reinforce with reason, and crown it with resolve. Now, I suspect some among you are young, or at least younger than I was, when last I walked among the living. To you I say this: never underestimate the power of rhetoric. In an age of distraction, you live in a time of endless noise, where attention is fleeting and opinions are traded like currency. Yet still, the spoken word holds dominion over the human soul. Do not speak merely to be seen. Speak to be understood. Speak to move. Speak to inspire. And above all, speak plainly. I have read modern speeches, or what passes for them, and I confess, I often find them maddeningly vague. Too many buzzwords, too many evasions. A leader should not hide behind jargon, nor cloak weakness in euphemism. Say what you mean, and mean what you say. Of course, a dash of wit does no harm. Indeed, I have found that humor disarms hostility and makes even the bitterest truths more palatable. One cannot always speak of war and hardship without offering a glimmer of levity. A well-placed quip can cut through tension like a blade through silk. But let us return to the matter at hand. How did I captivate crowds? I did so by listening first to the people, to the moment, to the pulse of history itself. A speaker must feel the mood of his audience, as a musician feels the strings of his instrument. He must adjust tone, tempo, and emphasis accordingly. There were times when solemnity was required, times when silence would have been cowardice, and times when defiance was the only appropriate reply. When I addressed Parliament after Dunkirk, I did not sugarcoat our losses. We had suffered grievously. But I also reminded them, and the watching world, that we would not yield. That was not bravado. It was necessity. The enemy listened too, and he needed to hear not just our strength, but our certainty. Dictators thrive on uncertainty. They feed on hesitation. Therefore, I gave them another lesson: brevity. Do not drag out a speech like a wet Sunday sermon. Know when to begin, and more importantly, when to end. A great conclusion is like a thunderclap. It leaves the audience breathless, eager for more, yet satisfied in their bones. I recall once, during a particularly long session in the House, a fellow MP whispered to me, "Winston, you've made your point." I replied, "Yes, but I haven't made it well enough yet." And so I continued. Still, there comes a moment when the final word must fall like the curtain at the theater. Strike while the iron is hot, and leave them wanting more. You may ask, how does one learn such timing? Practice, my friends. Endless practice. I rehearsed my speeches aloud, pacing the room, cigar clenched between my teeth, testing cadence and rhythm until the words felt like music. I rewrote passages again and again, sometimes late into the night, until they rang true. Yes. I was known for my cigars, my hats, my penchant for champagne. But these were accessories. The real work was done in solitude, with pen and paper, shaping thought into form. Let me tell you something else. The greatest speeches are born not in comfort, but in crisis. Adversity sharpens the mind. Desperation clarifies purpose. When everything is at stake, the need to communicate becomes absolute. That is why my finest words came during the darkest hours. Not because I was inspired by danger, but because I had no choice but to rise to the occasion. If you wish to captivate an audience, give them something worth remembering. Give them meaning. Give them direction. Give them hope. And if you have none to give, then say nothing at all. Now, I understand that in your time, the spoken word competes with images, videos, messages flying faster than Spitfires. Still, I urge you, do not surrender to brevity at the cost of substance. A well-crafted speech can pierce through the noise, if only because it dares to speak honestly. You may not face bombs falling from the sky, but you face challenges of your own: political discord, social unrest, technological upheaval. In such times, the need for clear, courageous voices is greater than ever. So I ask you, what will you stand for? What will you say when the moment demands it? Will you shrink from responsibility, or will you rise to meet it? If you choose the latter, then remember this: words are your allies. Use them wisely. Use them boldly. Use them with integrity. And if you have found value in these reflections, I invite you to share this message with others. Perhaps they too will benefit from the lessons of a man who once stood alone before a microphone and dared to lead a nation. Through fire, reflect upon what I have said. Consider your own voice, your own convictions. Then go forth and speak. Thank you.